Good afternoon and welcome to Working for You. I am Les Roy Williams. Thank you very much for joining us for today's program, wherever you are, whether in St. Kitts or Nevis, whether you are in Taiwan, whether you're in New York. We thank you very much for your presence with us. Today we continue to discuss a very important part of our society, and it has to do with our education institutions. Of course, we know that the COVID-19 has caused schools to close and so on because of health and safety concerns. Today, we are going to be discussing a number of guidelines for returning to school, for reopening school. And not only reopening school, but we must do so in a safe and healthy manner. So today I have with me on the panel officials from the Ministry of Education. I do have Mr. William Vincent Hodge, who is Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. Mr. Hodge, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I also have the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Debbie Isaac, who will be sharing with us as well. Dr. Isaac, welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here.
Right. Now, Dr. Debbie Isaac, just to give you a brief biography, has been an educator for the past 37 years, quite a number of years. She's a trained graduate teacher and has taught at both the primary and secondary school levels. She has held the post of Vice Principal, Education Officer, Deputy Chief Education Officer, and most recently has been promoted to the post of Chief Education Officer. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology with first-class honors from the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. She has also pursued a master's degree from the University of Roehampton in the United Kingdom, majoring in educational leadership, and has recently pursued and obtained a doctoral degree. She loves children and believes that every child can reach his or her fullest potential. Dr. Isaac, since I read that brief biography of you, we will start with you first. Now, of course, schools will be reopened for the 2021 school year. But normally, we would not be having all of this discussion about the reopening of school. But given the current situation of what is happening with the COVID-19 pandemic here in St. Kitts and Nevis and globally, there is a pressing concern. Classrooms, of course, have always been places of contagion in the sense that education is something that is contagious. It spreads. People interact in classrooms. It is where learning takes place between students and students, teachers and students, and so on. It is interactive. However, COVID-19 and the dangers that it poses has caused some rethinking in terms of the classroom and how we can bring students together in a safe and healthy environment. That is the concern. So learning, yes, but in a safe and healthy environment given the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, of course, we have seen that in some places schools have reopened. And in some places, they've had to close down. In other places, they have reopened, and the data is showing that it's okay. Now, we are reopening. And what have we done? What preparation has taken place to ensure that we open in a healthy and safe manner? Dr. Isaac.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. And I must say a pleasant good afternoon to our listening viewers and listeners on the radio. And it's a pleasure being on your program. We know that on September 7th, we'll be opening our doors. And indeed, parents, as well as our students, they are now wondering and they are expecting that they would be going back and they would be in environments that are safe and secure. So what have we done and what we are about to do? We have done quite a bit of planning, and I want to speak to us on some of the health and safety protocols. So in terms of students and how they're going to proceed in coming into the school compounds, what have we put in place? For screening, we'll say that all students, staff, and visitors who arrive at the school compound, they are required to wear a mask that covers both their nose and mouth. You know, Mr. Williams, that nowadays persons would just wear the mask, maybe just over their mouth and not covering up, you know, as they should. But we want to ensure that our students, our staff members, administration, that they know that as they come into the schools that they would be wearing the mask appropriately or properly. One of the things that we have to speak to our students about, and even persons who come in onto the school compound, is the wearing of handkerchiefs and scarves and bandanas. We have to make sure that our students know that when they're coming back to school, that they would be making sure that they're wearing the proper mask. So no handkerchiefs and scarves and such like when they're coming in. Temperature, they would be checked using an infrared thermometer. Any students who are found to have an elevated temperature above 99 degrees Fahrenheit will be asked to sit for 5 minutes in an area that we would put aside for them. What we'll do, we will check them after 5 minutes. We will check the temperature. Students whose temperature remains elevated should be taken to this isolation area. Parents will be notified to collect their children and take them to the nearest health facility or health center. Then the principal of the school will contact the Ministry of Health. Each day, we will have persons who are being assigned by the school or the principal to take temperature of the staff and the students entering the school compound. This will be recorded in what we call a screening record book. Staff and visitors who show respiratory symptoms and have high temperature will not be allowed to enter the school compound, and we know why. However, should a staff member or student develop flu-like symptoms while they're on the premises, they will be taken to a designated area in our schools that we label a sick bay, or for a better word, it's more or less the isolation area. Parents will be called and they will be asked to collect their child or children. In terms of physical distancing, unless you want to say something more, Mr. Williams, or you want me to proceed? You want me to continue?
Well, from what I know, that a number of schools and classrooms can be crowded. I use this example. For example, when I taught at CFBC, up at the Arts, Science, and General Studies,
Right.
2 of my classes, of the courses that I taught, Communication Studies and Caribbean Studies, those classes were very crowded. Sometimes you would have 50 students in a classroom and so on. So in this new environment, there are spatial concerns, especially with regards to the protocols of physical and social distancing. How will that work?
Okay, we have that downplayed. The physical distancing must be observed by following the markers that are placed on the floor. So some in the schools and some places where, let's say, near the office or even in the classrooms, they will have markers. And now we are saying that it's no longer 6 feet apart, but 3 feet. Persons must comply with the instructions given by the security guards. I know sometimes persons like to come to the school and they would not listen. But this is a time when we have to have persons really listening and complying. Posters would be mounted all over and giving more or less information, will be given direction and keeping the students more informed as to what they should be doing or what they should be observing in terms of physical distancing. Places like the cafeteria, in the principal's office, and even where the sanitization would be, we call them sanitization station, those have to have the markers so that students don't be crowding over in those areas. Hand sanitization station must be clearly marked so that persons can have their hands sanitized. Security officers will ensure that all persons on entering the school compound will sanitize their hands. And that's one of the first things that you'll have to do. After all the screening and so forth would have taken place, then that's when our students, because generally in our schools, the students, their bags are checked. Prior to COVID-19, that's one of our policies, protocols, that students' bags are checked so that they're not entering the compound with things that they shouldn't have in their bags. And as a result, they would have to go to the screening process and then their bags will be checked after everything's done and they're okay. All right? So we need persons who are coming to the schools, visitors, other stakeholders who will be coming to our schools. We need them to really observe our policies, to respect the things that we have put in place. Within the classrooms, we are making sure that not only are we going to do thorough cleaning of our classroom and the school compounds, but we're making sure that students will be sitting apart, that 3 feet apart, and wearing their mask as much as possible. So these are some of the things that we have put in place, and we'll be seeking to make sure that persons follow these guidelines.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the spatial inadequacies, has there been any thought has been given to a shift system, implementing a shift system in the primary and secondary schools to deal with those spatial issues?
Yeah, I'm going to address those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Hodge.
Should I speak now?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, okay.
Right, okay.
Should I just answer the question on the shift system part of it and then come up, because that is actually part of my presentation.
Well, go into your presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Williams. It's a pleasure to be here and to be sharing this platform with my Chief Education Officer, Dr. Debbie Isaac. So, Dr. Isaac's presentation, is based on the protocols, and so she probably will expand some more on that later. But this is the fourth opportunity that I've had to share some guidelines, specifically in reference to the reopening of schools. We were on the Frank and Candid program We did a COVID-19 briefing. We were on leadership matters last evening, and now we are here for working with you.
Working for you.
Working for you, sorry. Did I say working with you?
Yes.
Working for you. So we want to make sure that the word is put out there far and wide so that the public is engaged, parents in particular are aware of what's happening. So in terms of the school year, we have maintained the structure, 3 terms, and we have used the pre-announced dates for the opening and closing of schools, except the first term that has been extended by 1 week. Monday, 7th September to 11th December is term 1. We have blocked out the instructional period for each term because the focus this year has to be on getting instruction up and running, getting instruction going without much interruption. And so we have blocked out an instructional period for the guidance of teachers and parents. So we are saying that teaching will go uninterrupted for this period of time, up to December 4th. December 4th, the week following, would be a week when teachers are working on their record cards, so that parents will be able to collect these record cards somewhere around after the 11th of December. During this term, we are saying that there will be no designated examination period. Rather, teachers would be asked or be encouraged to do continuous assessment, especially at the secondary level where you have a double period. Teachers would be able to use that time to do their assessment because assessment is an integral part of instruction, of teaching. We are limiting the extracurricular activities. We are saying that school clubs and societies, extra classes, these would be allowed, but a different set of protocols would have to be set up and be approved by the task force, the COVID-19 task force. But those are things that would be allowed. So for each term, we have essentially designated the instructional period, we have designated the report card preparation time, we have designated the times when report cards would be collected. And these are just guidance for principals, for teachers. On the 7th and 8th, that's when teachers come back to the building. Physically, all teachers report. They will report before that because they have to do some summer training. Mm-hmm. But in terms of getting ready for instruction and all of that, those 2 days are designated for teachers to come back. We'll have the official opening by the Minister of Education, the Honorable John L. Powell. This will be done virtually. We would have education officers and other invited guests at a specific location, but teachers would be at their schools in the various locations logging on to this. Students start coming back on the Wednesday, the 9th of September. Now, when students come back, those protocols that Dr. Isaac shared would be observed, they would be implemented. In terms of kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, for all primary schools, those students would be returning to their schools full-time, every day, all day. Now we have schools, primary schools of different sizes. We put them into 3 categories: the small, the middle, and the large schools. The large primary schools, we have 3 of them in the Basti area: Beach Allen Primary, Dr. William Connor, and Tucker Clark. And then we have Sandy Point Primary. So we are saying that these schools would have to go on a shift system as of now. The middle-sized schools, we would determine if they need a shift system when we would have done some checking. Dr. Isaac started responding to that question. In terms of getting the measurement of the square footage of each classroom, I actually have some of the data. Some of the data was sent in already, but I didn't print it to bring it. So there is a formula. We understand it's online, and the persons can just put in the information, and it will tell us how many persons are allowed in each room. So this, the project unit in the Ministry of Education, along with the Education Planning Division, they have been working on this, and it's a tremendous amount of work. Now, when this is done, some of those middle-sized school might seem to be overpopulated because of the data that we have, the formula being used. Then we might have to say to those schools, then you might have to do a shift system. Now, some schools that are small, with 100 students or just over, just under, they would definitely be there every day, all day, all of their students. Those schools, those primary schools that have the shift system, some of the principals have said that they would want their grade 6 there every day, all day, because that is your examination class, so to speak, your assessment class. And so we are saying to them that if you have the space, of course, your grade 6 students can be there every day, all day. We have been wrestling with the timetable because we realize that for those children that are there every day, all day, they would be getting at least 6 hours of instruction compared to those students who are coming on shift that might just get between 2.5 to 3 hours of instruction. So that is one of our challenges that we are wrestling with.
What we seek to do, if I could interject here, is the fact that we are seeking to get equity across the board. Persons would want that for their children, and as a result, when we are doing whatever we decide in terms of shifting or the shift system, we will definitely have to make sure that there's equity across the board for this, for all our students.
Yes.
That is important to note here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Isaac. For the students who would be going back every day, all day, we are using the regular school times. They should report by 8:25, but we are saying that we want to encourage students to arrive earlier so that they can go through the protocol, the health screening, in time to be on the school premises for 8:25. So persons would have to arrive a little bit earlier. We are saying that those who are on the afternoon shift system, they should arrive at school by 11:45 so that they can have their lunch, they can do their assembly, they can have their registration and some, because even though you're coming in for the afternoon shift, those things that are typically done at mornings would have to be done for those who are coming onto the premises for the first time. Now, the issue of lunch is a big issue. This came out last night on Leadership Matters. And we are saying that the primary school children can very well remain on the premises for lunch, because most of them, the large majority of our primary school children, they do partake of the school meals. The school meals is a healthy, nutritious lunch. So we are going to say, if you don't want your child to partake of the school meals, then you would have to prepare a packed lunch for your child to bring to school, because we really have to make a decision and say children should not leave the premises to go across the street to vendors, because this is a very critical time. We don't know who might have the virus or who is asymptomatic and stuff like that, so we have to safeguard our children. Now, in case of secondary schools, we know some of them don't want the school lunch. The vast majority don't. Some of the schools have cafeteria. Washington Archibald High, Sadler Secondary, St. Charles E. Mills, and Bassey High School, there's one just nearby. So we really want to keep our children on the premises once they have checked in for the day, most of the time. So that's something as well that we're wrestling with. In terms of secondary schools, Bassey High and Washington Archibald High School, they definitely have to go on a shift system. The other secondary schools, apart from Sadler's, which is the smallest, they said that they can have their students back full-time. Now, again, the middle-sized secondary schools, we are implementing that square footage per room formula, and then we might decide, okay, well, your school is overcrowded, your students have to come back on a shift basis. The secondary school principals are working with Dr. Isaac and myself. We have been having conversation, and they are putting some flesh on their proposal as to how their situation would work. For example, Bastia High School is saying that, yes, their students will be able to come every day for a half day. And then the other half of the day will be virtual. And so we are waiting to get those plans. We already have some of them and so on. So the whole idea is to give secondary school principals in particular the opportunity to work out the proposal that would best suit their situation.
Now, does this apply to preschools as well?
I actually have the report for the preschool.
Okay.
So I can share that if you want me to do that. Okay. But in terms of the, can you ask that question again, please? What exactly you want to know about the preschool?
No, in terms of this preschool and in terms of the lunch and on all of that.
Okay.
Well, if I can speak to it, the preschools, they're dumb pack, basically.
Yes.
They're there and everything's provided for them. So they don't have to leave the compound at all. And in fact, they have the director and our internal, we have like an internal COVID task force. They have actually inspected, went through many of our centers and have made sure that they are ready, right, compliant, ready for students to return. So I think at least there were about over 16 of our public early childhood centers at one given time were assessed and were successful. So on the 10th of this month, they were opening their doors. There are some because it's by case basis. But the students, they're taken care of there. And the supervisors and teachers, they have been instructed and they have been trained by health specialists as to how to work with the students and observing the various protocols, health and safety protocols. And so I think they're good to go in terms of their, And I know parents were they were eager. So many parents, they were becoming very anxious. Some of the proprietors were really, they were like outraged because they really wanted to get things back in place. But yes.
How do you teach children at the preschool level about physical and social distancing measures?
It's amazing, you know, but I know little ones, you get to them via songs, jingles. And I have a grandson, and prior to the COVID, I used to have to inform him and say, go get your hands washed. Go, did you wash your hands? Now he's like, oh my goodness, I have to wash my hands and I have to sing the song while I wash my hands. So you would be amazed at these little ones. You get them into singing a jingle as how to go about, you know, washing their hands, making sure that they are following the right procedures. And once you are consistent with little ones, they would get it. Each day you come, you say, let's go. This is what we're going to do. One, let's go. They will get it. Eventually, it's going to be ingrained in them. Yes,
I am excited about that commercial that comes on ZIZ just before the news with a preschool from Nevis. That's my favorite commercial right now. Wow. But to add to what Dr. Isaac is saying, in terms of the physical and social distance, that is not compliant, is not a request or something that is mandatory for the early childhood. This was cleared by Dr. Laws and Mr. Samuel and the rest of the COVID task force. So it is not something that to be enforced. The emphasis is on the cleaning, the sanitization of the space. But as Dr. Isaac was saying, some of the public sectors have been reopened except Old Road because they're doing some maintenance work on the building. I think the report from the early childhood says at least 5 private centers have already been opened back. As was said, the task force went in, did the checks and so on, and give them a certificate that is to be posted. So members of the public should know that this center is approved for opening.
Right.
And we continue to caution private centers that they cannot open their doors except that the approval is given. Now, during the summer time, most of the preschools here on St. Kitts, they have just a few children coming in. For example, on Monday, I had the opportunity to visit at least 4 centers that were reopening, and the supervisors told me that at least half of the enrollment was already there, and that's basically what they expected. So these centers would continue to operate for the next 3 weeks. Then they close again for the break when the centers are refurbished and clean and so on. But we know parents have to go back to work, and so they were anxious for the centers to reopen.
Yes.
On Nevis, centers close. They would reopen on the 7th of September. That's what's going to happen on Nevis. I think essentially that is the update from the early childhood center unit, but they are open for business. In fact, some of the protocols that were drawn up, we have actually taken them on board to use at the primary and secondary level.
Right. Now, suppose that a child tests positive for COVID-19, what action would you take or that school take?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think in the event, let's suppose they develop a flu-like symptoms while on the premises, that they will be taken to what we designated an area, and we call it the sick bay, or better maybe still an isolation room, and the parents will be contacted. Yeah? If the parent for some reason does not answer, then we will seek another contact, an alternate contact person. We will wait for them to come to collect the child or ward, as the case may be, and ask them to take the child to either a doctor or to the health center. Then the principal of the school would proceed to inform the Ministry of Health about the incident. So that child, though, would not be able to return to school unless they have something medically to prove that they are free to come back.
Yeah, but if that child tests positive for the COVID-19, then what happens? Because it simply means then if that child has COVID-19, then there's always the possibility of community transmission within the classroom.
Then what would happen is that the school would have to close. Yep. That institution will have to close.
And all the students will have to go into quarantine.
Well, we'll have to do the contact tracing.
The contact tracing
will have to be done. We are hoping that parents would respond within an hour. As we said, if they go get the parents in the first time, we would contact an alternate person, but we would appeal to the employers to ensure that parents are given the opportunity to leave if they are called to collect the child and so on. And then to have these persons, we might have to call an ambulance or take them to a medical facility or something. But certainly, this is the reason why we will have to be doing the checks daily, so that we can keep track of persons who are likely to show symptoms. But of course, there have to be the contact tracing, and the person will have to be, well, maybe the whole school, as you said, would have to go into quarantine, and then people are tested, everybody's tested and all of that. But in this case, we'll have to be guided by the Ministry of Health.
I know you mentioned earlier about the spatial and the shift system. Has there any thought been given to virtual education as a means of dealing with the spatial inadequacies with respect to classrooms.
In fact,
I know that it's a pale shadow of the real thing. It really cannot replace the real thing, I mean, but...
Yeah, we have that in mind. In fact, we call it a blended approach. In other words, we have face-to-face, and then we have the virtual. In the Ministry of Education on St. Kitts Nevis, we have established a standardized virtual platform. It's called the Microsoft Teams. We have trained many of our teachers. In fact, we will be doing another set of training this month on the 24th, starting on the 24th, for making sure that all our teachers would have been onboarded onto the platform and would have gotten the necessary training for the online classes. Because we do not know what lies ahead, and so we have to prepare ourselves. We would prefer if we will continue the face-to-face, because there is something about seeing someone, and seeing their facial expression and just being in their company, even though we may be apart. It does something to you. It's just like being here, looking at you and speaking and seeing you nodding, like you're with it. If it was like virtual, I may have a screen that I'm sharing and I'm not seeing you. So I'm speaking, but I'm hoping that you're there and you're listening. So yes, indeed, we have put that in place, that in the event that we have to, and as I said, it will have to in some cases, where students would be on a shift, and so they would have face-to-face, and when they're not in school that day, then they would have that online approach.
Yes.
Virtual
Mr. Hodge.
Now, the government, the Ministry of Education, we have spent a lot of money. I think it's over $429,000 to procure devices, tablets. Some 1,200 of them were given out to students on St. Kitts and 600 to students on Nevis. Some homes have been outfitted with the internet to provide Wi-Fi and so on. And so there's that capability for some students, not all. We would have to continue to work on this, but for now we'll have to work with what we have. Some teachers, out of their own wisdom, their own ingenuity, engaged their students during the lockdown on Zoom. Regrettably, some teachers did not. And I guess that's something that we'll have to address. But there's provision for online learning. Even in the great United States, it has not worked as they intended it to work. So never mind we here in a developing state, I think we have done fairly well. But teachers definitely would need that training. That's one of the challenges, because you're being trained in a virtual environment to work in a virtual environment. And so we're hoping that, those days leading up to the opening of school, that the training would really benefit the teachers to do this better. But I think most persons were quite comfortable with Zoom and some other online platforms that they were even using before
Google
COVID,
Classroom.
Google Classrooms. But the Ministry of Education decided to go with Microsoft Teams. We have closed down our Zoom accounts, and we are working through the Microsoft Teams so that we can master it. I do have some more information from the early childhood, which I forgot, which I didn't really pay attention to, and they refer to it as restrictions. It is saying a child or staff member who is sent home because of suspicious symptoms of COVID-19 cannot return to the center unless a certificate from the doctor or community health nurse indicates that the person is well enough to re-enter the school's population. Only a responsible adult can bring children and take children from the center. Typically, we have some buses that would stop by centers, and parents would hand out their children, and the teachers would take them in. Now that has to stop. The parents, they have to get off the bus, they have to come to the center to ensure that the children are properly checked and sanitized and admitted. Because in the event that you have to take back the child or take the child to the doctor, the parents must be there. Parents are no longer allowed inside the center. They have to turn the children over to the workers so that they are not, the parents don't go into contaminate. If they want to meet with teachers or principals, they have to make an appointment, and they are stressing this. Impromptu meetings that you would have accommodated in the past, these would have to stop. You have to do this electronically. Okay? The on-duty traffic warden must not take children. That was another person who would take children from the buses to take them to the center. So the traffic wardens who are working at early childhood centers, they can no longer take these children. The parents are the responsible adult who bring the children, adults who bring the children to the center. They must be the one who are legally turning these children over to the school. Visibly sick or ill staff member or child will not be allowed into the center. Face masks must be worn, and for now the protocols, the regulations are saying that children 3 years and under do not have to wear masks. This is something that we might have to address further, because people feel that even kindergarten should not be allowed to wear masks. So this might come in for further discussion. There was a concern raised about fans and air condition. When they did the training with Dr. Bradshaw, I think they were told that they should avoid using AC all the time. They might just have to put it on for 2 hours and then take it off and so on. The free natural air is encouraged. And so during my visit on Monday, some of the supervisors were complaining that the place is just too hot and unbearable. So again, that's another issue that has to be discussed. But the early childhood really have done a lot of work. Their centers are ready for business, and we at the primary and secondary level are going to have to take a couple of pages out of their books.
Mm-hmm. You know, the evidence is coming out that school closures were doing more harm than good. And yet, parents must be very concerned about their children. While they want them to go back to school, they might be very concerned about their children going back to school in the present environment in which we are of this contagion. What would you say, Dr. Isaac, that you can say to parents, for example, why is it important to open schools for in-person instruction?
Okay. I would say to parents that coming to school, you should allow them to come, because the face-to-face instruction is so vital. You understand? It is very vital, because children have thought that they need to feel presence. Even when they are doing virtually, doing their lessons virtually, if they're very small, they need to have their parents there to make sure that everything is going well and supporting them. In school, the teachers do support them, would be able to encourage them. So
the support
is very important, especially during this time, because we have to realize that persons take on situations differently. Their coping mechanisms are different. And even our children, some may be excited to get back. Others may feel, I'm not too sure. Some may feel a bit anxious. And the guidance counselors would have to play a major role here to let them know, yes, it's good to know that your feelings, they are, they're authentic.
Yes.
And we're here to help you. But they have to come on, because COVID-19, we do not know. From my stance, I would want it to go today. But for now, we have to work with what we have. And we have to get our children prepared mentally, prepared emotionally. And so I would say to the parents,
so their social and emotional health is important.
It is very, the social, emotional health rather important, especially in helping students to do well in school. Because if you're not feeling well, if you're anxious, anxiety blocks, it just goes all over, and it would affect the way you think, you know. So we'll have to get our parents to relax as well, because it is just something that we have not encountered before. So we have to get them to understand that we're working with the situation that we have, and we are going to do our best with your child or your children.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Hodge.
Yeah, I mean, our parents, some of them, the majority, I think, really want the children to come back to school physically. There are some who would have concerns in terms of the health part of it, but I think that our COVID task force and the government, the Ministry of Health, have their hands on the pulse on this situation. Because if there are active cases, then our children definitely would have to be protected. Now, when I look at the situation in the States, because I'm always on CNN and other US channels, when I look at the situation, I could see why parents are fearful and don't want to send their children. Because you have all of these activities, like you had 250 bikers who were having an event day on the weekend, no mask or anything like that. Next thing you know, there's going to be an upsurge in probably South Dakota or other states, you know, because persons were able to just spread the virus during those kind of large, massive crowd. 250,000 people is a humongous amount of people, as we know. But as the situation exists in St. Kitts right now, you know, the virus is contained, persons have been isolated, and so on.
Right.
On Leadership Matters last night, a caller raised the concern that perhaps the borders should be open later than October, because they're saying that we need to allow schools to settle down without any active case and anything like that. But as soon as we get an active case, then education might have to rethink, you know. So I understand that parents will be concerned, of course. I mean, these are your children. But at the same time, we can't wait until the COVID is over to learn. We can't wait, because children have missed an enormous amount of time, at least because they're practically 2 terms of instruction. And it's not every parent who have the ability, the capability, and the patience to really teach their children at home. I mean, there were a couple of humorous videos going around where parents were talking that they praise the teachers, they thank them, anything they ask for they're going to give, because they can't really do this. You know, and they were ready to get the kids back out of the homes back to school, because they realized that, look, teachers really, if you have 4 and 5 kids in your home, and it's just a challenge for you, when you have 29, 30 plus kids in a class, you know, and so, but yeah, our heart is with getting our kids to come back so that they can continue to learn. That's their future.
And it's not just about the instruction, as you outlined. It's what Dr. Isaac was saying, their social and emotional well-being. And I'm sure as well, a lot of parents, you know, it's their children, yes, but they were having some issues in terms of their emotional well-being as well, having to manage these children for these, you know, or to find somebody to take care of them and so on, is in itself or can be stressful as well.
That's true.
So it's really a lifting of the burden, so to speak, off of some of these parents having to deal with their children being at home for this length of time, you know, and having to manage that. Right.
Are the lines going to be open up?
Yes. So we are going to open the lines now so that people can call in, of course, and ask their questions. The numbers to call are 466-2666, That's 466 2666, 662 662 8674, 662 8674, 767 4765, 767 4765, and the international number is 1239 645 4500. That's 1239 645 4500. We await your calls. You know, this has been a most challenging time, not only for students, but for teachers as well. And as I listened to Mr. Hodge speaking in terms of some teachers just don't know how to do this online thing. You know, especially those who can be older, or let me put it in that bracket, and who really have not been exposed much to technology and who don't know the use of technology. They may find it more challenging. Some of them will tell you that they're technophobic. They're suffering with technophobia. And that is why I can see the importance now. Like, for example, when I did teacher training, postgraduate diploma in teacher training, it was a must that you do something in terms of technology in the classroom. That was actually part of it. You had to demonstrate the use of technology within the classroom, because that is so important to learning now. And COVID-19 has even brought out the importance of the use of technology in terms of one's education. Dr. Isaac.
Yeah, that is so true, Mr. Williams. What we have found out that they have used this term digital natives for our younger ones, who it seems as though they are born with a chip inside,
yes,
and they just know what to do. In fact, it's their environment. Could imagine a child, even 2 years old, can go on a tablet, and the child knows what is the YouTube. They know the feature. They know what to do.
yes.
So, and then the older folks now, as you said, they're called digital immigrants. Yeah. And as you said, they may have that phobia. But what we're seeking to do is to have them be paired with someone who would know they're more technologically savvy, and so they're able to assist them. So in some of our schools, we have teacher assistants, and they are younger in a lot of respects, and they know a lot more about the technology, and so they can assist. But it is true that some of our older teachers will be having these issues, but we are seeking to help them. We know ourselves when we started out that we had to ask our children. I had to ask my children quite a bit of things. And I said, I was your teacher, now the roles have reversed. So you're going to teach me this. Mm-hmm. You understand? And I think I've done well. So what persons don't do sometimes is to reveal their ignorance. And this is time when if you don't want to tell anybody, find somebody who you can confide in and say, you know what, I need you to help me to get onto this thing, and I need you to help me to know how to get on and share my video and so forth. If you don't ask for help, and you know what you can say? They can say, okay, give me some technical assistance here. That's a nice way to say it. If you don't know what to do or how to get on, don't just stay there, because things are moving. I'm moving very fast, accelerating, and you'll be left behind, or you'll have to retire. So what persons need to do now is to say, okay, I'm not going to be left behind, right, Ms. Ange?
Right.
We are going to make sure that what we don't know, we are going to ask for help. And that is what we are seeing happening. And I am amazed that there's some older ones who are getting on and loving it. And they're spending more time on the computer and more times looking at videos and doing their thing. So it's just what it is right now. They would have to just ask for technical assistance.
Yeah, what Dr. Isaac said is true. It was definitely one of the reasons for some teachers why they actually did not engage the students. We know for sure it was for some reasons, as one of the reasons. But we have to make the effort to learn to use the technology. I am not ashamed to say that when I left from here in 2000, I could not turn on the computer. The Ministry of Education at the time did organize some class for teachers, for principals, but I had my secretary. I was so busy making sure that my school was up and running well that I left those kind of things to my secretary, who had the skills. When I got to the United States, I landed myself a job that I did not apply for. And if I didn't understand how to use the computer, I would not have been able to do my work. So the household that I lived in, one of my former grade 6 students, it was her 13-year-old son who taught me how to use the computer, how to set up emails, respond to emails, and so on. When we got home at evenings from work and from school, that was my teacher, a 13-year-old. And so it forces us to learn those things that we really need to do our job at the time. So I still not the best, but I can handle myself fairly well on the use of the computer. So these younger folks, our younger teachers, our principals, some of our principals we know have that technophobia. You send for information, you send a hard paper, a copy, you get that immediately almost back. But ask them to send it electronically, it takes a little longer, right? But with practice, it's going to come.
In fact, I was looking at the news and what I saw is that you had some universities that went totally online.
Yes.
But somehow the students felt that they were being shortchanged. And so they were saying, look, we paid our tuition and you did not deliver. They were saying to the universities. And so therefore we want our money back. Because the online education that we were promised, it was not adequately delivered to us. And they were requesting their money back. So COVID-19, the pandemic, as insidious as it is, very lethal, has taught us some things. Yeah. What else has it taught us, do you think, in terms of the way that we view education and schooling? Technology is one, and we see now the importance, or even more, the importance of technology in education. Right. What else has it really taught us in your view, in terms of how we view education and schooling?
For me, it is telling us that education does not always have to be in a brick and mortar setting. It doesn't have to be in a physical space. That's definitely clear. It is also saying that we don't have to be 100% at a particular skill to use it. We can start. It also tells me that teachers are no longer the fount of all knowledge. Because some teachers did say that their students were guiding them as to how to maneuver the platform, how to be able to share a screen. If they miss something, how to go back and so on. Teachers were saying that children were giving them the guidance during the lesson. And so we have to recognize that even though we are the teachers, we are not the fount of all knowledge or all skill. And if our teachers have to direct us as to if our students have to direct us as to how to do something, that does not make us less of an individual. You know? So for me, those are some of the lessons in terms of education. The main one being that you don't have to come to a particular school to learn, a particular place to learn. Learning can take place anywhere.
That is so true. We have also learned that the importance of connectivity. Yeah?
Staying connected, yeah.
Yeah, it is. The fact that even during the lockdown, you know, for some persons, they felt like they were not going to cope. In fact, there were persons that were so overwhelmed because they were not accustomed to not being able to go out and relate and, you know, have relationship with other persons. And even for the children being indoors, you know, not being able to see their friends, not being able to do the normal things that they would have done. So it was a lot of adjustments. And we could have seen that after we were open up again, people were like flooding the streets, going, because they realized we need to see people, we need to see each other, we need to connect, we need to move, our bodies need movement and things like that. We also realize that it is important to reach out to other people. It's a form of connectivity, but it's another way. Sometimes we think that we are an island by ourselves. You understand? And it's persons were finding ways of reaching out and realizing that in reaching out they were learning and they were giving back. And do you know, humanity, sometimes the only thing that we need is somebody reaching out to us and touching base and saying, how are you doing? And that is so important, even our children. So even though teachers could not have taught them but reach out by WhatsApp to the parents and say, you know, so how are you coping? It's important that the parents would have known that, you know, the teachers were thinking of them and how they're coping in this time and what they could do to assist in any way. Because initially we had asked that schools provide the care packs or they had copies of, you know, activities for the children to take home. And at first, we wanted it for the more vulnerable students, but we realized that we had to cover everybody. Everybody. Because we did not know what we were going to expect. And so we tried our best. Not everybody had, but we tried our best to have our schools prepared those packages for the students. And some schools went beyond, you know, Mr. Williams, to get food packages, hampers, to their students that are vulnerable, that would need that extra help. They took money from the school and raised their own funds or however donors, and they reach out to families. And that itself is important. And it's only when we have these sorts of, you know, even like, you know, natural disasters and so on, we realize the importance of who your neighbor is. You understand? And so that is what. Even in our classes now, children are going to realize that the person who sits beside me, now they're far apart, how weird this feels. So we have learned quite a bit.
Yes, and you brought out a very good point in terms of the communitarian aspect, because we are now learning how one person's behavior can, not that we did not know it all along, one person's behavior can affect another. We are all connected, that a person's health can affect my health. But not only that, we are also learning the importance of hygiene and sanitization and cleanliness.
Very much.
And all of those things in terms of how those things are vital to the health of communities.
Yes.
And we have learned accountability, as you've just rightly said, that I'm not living for myself, that even if I don't want to do these things, that I have to do these things because of what can happen. So COVID taught us quite a bit.
Right. No, we are creatures of habit, but sometimes what happens is that we become complacent. And so therefore there are protocols and measures that are implemented that over time you start to see people start to relax and to let down their guard. Now, what will be done, Mr. Hodge, in terms of monitoring these protocols and measures that are put in place, the mitigation measures that are put in place to avoid, any sort of a transmission of the virus and surge and that sort of a thing, which can be more disastrous than anything else in the long run. Because we're already dealing with a risky situation. It's risky because we have people together. And, schools, would they have some sort of a seal, a certification seal to say, look, this school has gone through the COVID-19 preparation and training, and so therefore they are ready to actually open and to welcome students. Because people want to know as well that they are going into a safe environment and that people have been properly trained to know what the expectations are.
Well, that definitely was done with the preschools, the early childhood sector. That was definitely done. That is actually ongoing. And once the task force is happy that the infrastructure, if you wish, or the protocols, the signage and so on are in place, they would give a certificate of approval, and this certificate is supposed to be displayed so that members of the public would know that this institution has gone through certain procedures, certain processes, and are ready for business. We would have to do something similar with the primary and secondary schools. So that task force that we have that is quite busy working, we can't disband it just yet. We'll have to get that going around and doing some checks. But we would be expecting principals, their management teams, and the adults in the building to guide and ensure that these things are put in place. Some schools have to spend their own money to get certain things. The ministry would be providing infrared thermometers. We gave secondary schools at least one. We know how to up the amount, because you can't have just one testing station going on because it's so many kids you want to process at the same time. So some schools, well, most schools will have to actually use some of their funds to purchase some of the things. We have a project to put in hand washing stations. We're getting some assistance with this. We don't think that that's going to happen for September, but it is something that we are working towards, hand washing station, because we might not be able to maintain or sustain purchasing hand sanitizers and so on. So these are things that are part of the plan to make these schools safe and healthy and stuff like that. But a lot of it is going to depend on the cleaning, the persons who are hired to clean, who feel like they could clean maybe just for 3 hours a day. They have to spend their 8 hours that they are employed to do on the school, because cleaning has to be ongoing. Right? Some institutions have more than one cleaner. They have to really work hard. They have to work assiduously to keep the cleaning up to a certain standard.
If I may add as well, in terms of assisting and monitoring, the students, I think this is time where schools can put in place their prefect system again. There are some schools who have done that effectively. They can have prefects and the class monitors. They can have that because there are times when a teacher may have to leave. We should not really be leaving students alone, but if you have to just step out the classroom, then there is a class monitor or monitress that could help with, help the students to, do what they're told to do. I know it's a difficult task because sometimes, unless you're respected by your peers, it's a difficult task to have this done. But it's all a learning experience. It's a new norm, we call it. New normal. And we all are going to be learning together, and we have to seek to apply these things every day. Reminders. And that's why we don't have signage, or they already have them, but on this Effective School initiative, they will be having more posters that would have things to remind them. As adults, we need reminders. Could imagine the little ones.
Right.
So.
Okay. Now, I want to remind our audience that the phone lines are open, and the numbers to call are 466-2666. That's 466-2666, 662-8674, 662-8674, 767-4765, 767-4765, and 1-239-645-4500, the overseas line. 1-239-645-4500. Now, Mr. Hodge, we spoke about students, children showing symptoms. If they have a cough, or if they have a temperature, because you'll have these temperature guns and so on when, I don't like to use the word guns, but, and of course, you will have children going home, because, children in the preschools and so on, they're going to go home and they're going to be doing that because children is quite funny. But we have a call. Working for you, good afternoon. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One concern I have, kids who have asthma, do they have to wear the mask all day?
That's a health question, but...
The short answer would be no. In fact, the members of the COVID task force, Dr. Laws and Mr. Samuel, that is something that they have been answering all the time. At certain times, they'll be expected to take it off. Even adults, if you have these conditions, you will be expected to just maybe ease it to the side for a couple of minutes, So it is not something that they're expected to keep on all day. But these are the kind of questions that we really need to ventilate so, the public is well informed.
Okay. Do we have another call? Working for you, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
I would like to ask Dr. Isaac and Mr. Hodge. I know last night Mr. Hodge spoke about some of the students, some of the schools would not be, the students would be there all day. Did he say that some of the students would be in school all day?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, my concern is about those schools where you have the shift system. What happens to those students who would be at home, working from home, and the parents are out of work?
Well, that would have to be, well, first of all, let me say that, yes, there'll be the provision for students to have learning packets to work on. schools would provide these for students for them to work on while they are at home. Other schools where the technology is in place, they would have online classes. For example, the principal of the Basel High School said to me that, said to us that he would have one English teacher with maybe 100 children online, because you can teach that number in the virtual space, you can teach that number of children. And so a number, all of it, if he has 100 plus students in fifth form, and they're at home on a particular morning, they can all engage just with one teacher online. Okay? Now, parents would have to trust their students. The students should be responsible enough to know that, okay, this is a morning when I'm home, but I am not home because I'm supposed to be in school in the virtual work. So we're going to have to remind our students that it's not a vacation, that they have to log on when they're supposed to log on. I'm hoping that the school would have some way of actually taking an attendance. I think the Microsoft Teams allows us to take an attendance, or the schools would have to have a teacher in that Zoom class or that Microsoft Teams class, to actually write down the name of every child who logs on, so that you keep track of who are showing up to class in the virtual space. Yes. But our children would have to be told that they got to be responsible. They can't just not sign on to the classes. And when the school discovers who is not signing on, then the schools have to engage the parents.
Right. Working for you, good afternoon. Hello?
Yes, I have another concern. Now, you said that when the students arrive at the school, the security would be responsible for checking their temperatures and those kind of things?
Not just the security. The security will be part of the process, but we have to have some other persons, other persons who work in schools. Each school would be asked to identify at least 2 persons. We are having our principals meeting next week, and this is one of our agenda items. Dr. Laws is ready to organize the training for these persons. Now, only Basel High School has a registered nurse. We are also trying to see if we can get other medical professionals. We have already expressed this to Cabinet, and we are preparing a Cabinet submission to further develop this, where we can get at least a medically trained person, even if it's just for the secondary schools, as a start. All right, because we know the medical field, the hospital is already complaining that they don't have enough nurses. So we would have to see how many medically trained persons we can get to assist us in this. But for sure, we would select a number of persons who would get some medical training, because as Dr. Law said, is not rocket science. It's something that with a couple hours of training that individuals will be able to do. If there are any volunteer nurses, if there are any retired nurses, in fact, I'm supposed to make contact with the Retired Nursing Association. There's a Nurses Association of Retired Nurses. So I want to make some contact to see if any of these good ladies would be brave enough to come and assist us with that, because that's going to be a key area. You know, when students arrive at school, the lunch, the recess, and their departure, those are our challenges that we would have to work out.
Yes, good. Because, of course, we have to have all these measures in place. And as I see it, the COVID-19 and the model that has been used is really a symptomatic one, where people are manifesting symptoms. But we have to realize that there are also asymptomatic persons who do not manifest any sort of symptom, who may not, be detected by a thermometer gun, who would not have a cough, who would not, be showing any symptom at all.
Yes.
My concern is, will there be any sort of, sometimes in the schools, random testing?
That's a good point. It's something we haven't thought of.
Very much so. Yeah, I think that's, as you said, that's something that we can consider, and the way forward, that we can do that.
Yeah, random, because
yeah,
I mean, an asymptomatic person can actually spread the virus.
Yes, and that is so true. I was going to say that in many cases they say that the younger ones, the students, you know, then normally the ones that would be exhibiting such. But we'll definitely have to have something like that. It's just like when we do searches in a school, and for a particular day, we may just have a random search of students, but it has to be done and show respect to them.
Yes.
Because when you do that and the child goes home and says to his or her parent,
you don't want them to think it's discriminatory,
right,
that they have been singled out.
Very much so. We have to be discreet, and the child should not feel like he or she's been targeted for whatever reason. So it must be told very early that this would be done. So in the event that, let's say, Mr. Williams, Lester, Les Roy, yes, you're being called, you wouldn't think, so why me? Why not Mr. Hodge? You know, like that. So that's important, that we're going to have to look into that as well.
Right. Okay, I think we're out of time, and I would give you a minute to wrap up. Anything that you would like to say? Anything that was left unsaid that you would like the audience to know? You can do that now.
Okay, I am really excited to be here and to be sharing, because we know that our parents, they are main stakeholders, and they need to be informed. They need to know that we are taking this seriously, that when their children return to school, that they will be safe. And we may not have it all together as yet. We are generally in meetings regionally, and we are realizing that our counterparts in the region, they're having their challenges, and they're similar to us. But we are working behind the scenes. And even though we may not come all the time to the airwaves, we are behind the scenes, we are seeking to get things ready for the return of our students back to school. So, Les Roy, thank you again for having us. And it was a pleasure. And it was a long one too. We're able to express, I've been in sessions where it was so short. I did not get to express all that I needed to, but this was a really good session indeed. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We want to encourage our parents to seek information. Your principals, your children's principals will be engaging you, because we have to have a meeting with parents. The primary early childhood supervisors, they had their meetings. Persons from the unit, the resource teachers, they went out and participated in these meetings. So as Dr. Isaac said, parents are a very important group of stakeholders, and so you have to know what's happening. As I said at the beginning, this is the fourth opportunity that we have had to share information, but yet we know we're going to get persons from the public who say they don't know what the Ministry of Education is doing. That's because they're not listening to the news media. Some of us choose to be selective about which programs we listen to on radio or what we watch on television. But I'm saying to the public here in St. Kitts that for the benefit of your children, you need to make sure that you tune into ZIZ and other media to make sure that you get the information. Because this is very critical information. Because some of the same concerns that have been raised have been addressed in all of these forums. We're not done yet. We're going to be keeping to inform you. We'll keep informing you. We will be coming back on future programs because we have to make sure that the information is put out to the public. And you can feel free to call the Ministry of Education. We have a whole lot of numbers. You can just go through government headquarters and you'll get to us. To ask questions, contact your principals. If your principals can answer your question, tell them to give you the PS number or to give you the number for the CEO. Because our numbers are public information. And they can call us, you can call us to make sure that you get the information that you want.
Right. So I want to thank our Chief Education Officer, Dr. Debbie Isaac, for being here today and sharing with us on such an important topic, the reopening of schools. Schools are important. They are vital for learning. They are vital for social and emotional development, the development of interpersonal skills. So important, not just academics, but the entire formation of the individual, the holistic development of people. We also want to thank Mr. William Vincent, and there's another one.
Austin.
Mr. William Vincent Austin Hodge. I must remember to include all of those that have such meaning.
Only Minister Richards knows all three in that order. He gets it right every time.
William Vincent Austin Hodge. Good. So thank you so much, Mr. Hodge, our permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education, for being here. As you said, it's the 4th time, and that underscores how important it is that the public understands what the Ministry of Education is trying to do and to get its message across so that we can all be safe and we can all be healthy and you know, we can all benefit from what is happening. So thank both of you.
You're welcome.
You have been listening to another edition of Working for You. Thank you very much to all those who tuned in to today's program, those of you who listened or those of you who called in. We continue to appreciate you from week to week. Next week, we will be back with another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams. Take care.